Hey, my name's Izzy. This is Rolling Virtual Cards coming at you with another Commander deck build for the month of Atraxa. Atraxa, best counters. What makes this one the best counters? I just shoved all the counter cards together. Like, if it had a counter involved with it, I put it in it just to try to run good counter cards. That's kind of the point. That was the idea. That's what I was going for. Just the cards with the best counters, or the best cards that happen to have counters. The best cards that could be proliferated. Let's put it that way. Atraxa Praetor's Voice is a great commander. We'll go over it quickly again, like I do every episode with these. If you want more in depth, check out the first video. Atraxa's Praetor's Voice is green, white, blue, black for a 4/4 legendary creature, Angel Horror. Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink at the beginning of your end-step proliferate. The reason why this is good is because proliferating counters is great. And all the keywords are great. You can hit people, you can block yourself, protecting stuff, you can always trade with something and you gain some extra in life, which I love. You know here, excellent life is great in Commander. So let's go into the card by card here. 1/1 counters, because there's a lot of them, so we just ran a lot of the good ones. Hingerback Walker is famously known as just a good card. It comes in with X 1/1 counters, costing 2x. When it dies, you make a 1/1 Thopter with flying for each 1/1 counter it had. You can pay 1 and tap it to add a counter, but this card coming out like early, like as a 1/1, someone's gonna kill it before it becomes a problem, or maybe not worry. But like if you get this guy out like as a 4/4 with like 4 1/1 counters and Atraxa makes it a 5, people don't want to kill it all of a sudden because they're like, that's 5 flyers that I gotta deal with, which protects you from board wipes and stuff, which is just kind of funny. Walking Ballista is a walking combo piece, as anyone who plays any format knows. But for 2x, comes in with X 1/1 counters just like Hingerback Walker, except you can pay 4 to put a counter on it, and you can remove a 1/1 counter from it to deal 1 damage to any target. So it's interaction, it's got a mana sink, it can become really big, and it combos with another card in this deck later on. Hardened Scales double the counters, or adds an additional 1/1 counter. Machias, the Lunarch, comes in with X 1/1 counters on it, and you can tap it to put a counter on it, or you can tap it to remove a counter and put a 1/1 counter on each other creature. Incubation Druid, it comes in with it taps for a color, for 1 of any color. If it has a 1/1 counter on it, it taps for 3 of that color instead, and then you can adapt it for 3 and 2 green. If it has no counters on it, if it has no 1/1 counters on it, you put 3 1 counters on it. Ozlet the Shattering Spear is 1 of green. It adds an additional 1/1 counter. You can pay 1 and a green to put a 1/1 counter on a target artifact or creature you control at sorcery speed, and you can cycle it for 2. Scavenging Ooze is 1 and a green for a 2/2 ooze that you can pay a green to exile a card from a graveyard. If it's a creature, you put a 1/1 counter on it and gain a life. Simic Ascendancy is another great example of this. It likes 1/1 counters, but it takes growth counters. It's like one of the only cards that growth counters, but it's an alternate win con. Green and a blue for an enchantment. For 1 green blue, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters in Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, Simic Ascendancy has 20 more growth counters on it, you win the game. Very easy to get to. People can kill it, but like, I love it. It's fun. Absent Falconer, the populates what's gross. Atraxa makes this gross, just for a quick second, because if you get like 5 creatures with 1/1 counters on them, boom, they all get proliferated, so they all get 1/1 counters. And then you proliferate Simic, so that's 6 1/1 counters all of a sudden, or 6 counters onto it. Absent Falconer makes all your 1/1 counter creatures have flying, and you can outlast for a white at sorcery speed to put a counter on it. Breaching Evolution doubles the 1/1 counters you put on something. Champion Lampart makes it that people can't block creatures you control. With creatures that are creatures with power less than it can't block creatures you control. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on it. Fertilid enters with 2 1/1 counters, and you can pay 1 and a green to remove a counter and grab a basic land to put it on the battlefield, which is great because you can just keep getting more 1/1 counters on it. Heliod's the other card that combos with Walking Ballista. I'll go over it a little bit later. But the reason it's here is because you can gain life. Whenever you gain life, you put a 1/1 counter on something, on an enchantment or creature. And for 1 and a white, you give another creature lifelink. Inspired Calling, you draw a card for each creature you control with a 1/1 counter, and you give them indestructible. Calling of their Whispering Hopes, you add an additional 1/1 counter onto stuff. And it taps for X mana, where X is for X of 1 mana, X mana of 1 color, where X is its power. Mana Gorger Hydra becomes big whenever a player casts a spell, gets a 1/1 counter on it, and it has trample. Rishkar, Prim, and Renegade enters, you put a 1/1 counter on 2 creatures, and then creatures with 1/1 counters tap for a green. Tribute to the World Tree, whenever a creature enters, if it's power you draw a card if it's power 3 or greater, otherwise you put 2 1/1 counters on it. Corpse Jack's Menace adds an additional 1/1 counter whenever doubles 1/1 counters whenever a counter would put on something. Field Retreat, when a land enters, you either get a 2/2 white cat beast, or you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain vigilance. Forgotten Ancient gets a 1/1 counter on it for each, for whenever a player casts a spell, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you can just move those 1/1 counters wherever you want. Hero of the Secret Streams makes it so that creatures with 1/1 counters can't be blocked. Shalai, Voice of Plenty, gives you planeswalkers you control and other creatures you control hexproof, and then for 4 and 2 green you can put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. And the Great Henge is the Great Henge. Taps for 2 green, you gain 2 life, and non-token creatures enter with a 1/1 counter and you draw a card. This might look like the 1/1 counter deck, but it's running a few other cards which we'll get into, one of which being the Simic Ascendancy, which wasn't a 1/1 counter thing, so I didn't ran it. Spark Double is great. Honestly, you could probably run Spark Double in any deck with Atraxa, because you just get 2 proliferates at the end of turn, which is gross. And it's an Atraxa that comes with a 1/1 counter, which is gross. So it's a 5/5, and which is going to get double proliferated. So Spark Double is like such a good friend with Atraxa. ETBs, we went over that. Eternal Witness grabs a card back from your graveyard to your hand. We went over the rest. This is an ETB enabler technically, because it enters the battlefield and can become anything, enabling it. Beastmaster, any artifact, a planeswalker creature. Beastmaster Ascension's a finisher, it hits the field. This is another card, not a 1/1 counter card, just a good counter card. It gets whenever a creature you control attacks, you put a quest counter on it, and when you have 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5, which is a great way to win. And we went over Champion. Ramp, Everflowing Chalice, taps for a colorless for each counter on it. Multi-kick, so it comes in with a counter per multi-kick, per kick. And yeah, you can keep buffing that, proliferating that with Atraxa, which makes it tap for a lot. Birds taps for any color. Wayfarer's Bauble grabs you a basic. Arcane Signet taps for any color. Farseek gives you an island, swamp, or plains. Fellowar Stone taps for any color your opponent has. Incubation Druid taps for 1 of any color. If it has a counter, it taps for 3 of that color. Rampant Growth grabs you a basic. Steve grabs you a basic. Chromantic Lantern grabs you, or taps for any color and then makes your lands tap for any color. Command Sphere taps for any color and can be sacked to draw a card. Cultivate and Kodama's Reach grabs you a basic onto the field tapped and a basic into your hand. Fortilid we went over. Comma we went over. Replacing Ring, Replicating Ring enters the battlefield, taps for any color. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a night counter on it. And then if you have 8 or more night counters on it, you remove all of them and create 8 colorless snow artifact tokens named Replicate Ring with tap, add 1 mana of any color. This is gross because you can get that replicate double fast with your commander. And remember, the duplicates all get those counters. So all of a sudden you make 8 colorless snows, and if it keeps going, those 8 will make 8 each, which is disgusting. Rishkar we went over. Black Market, whenever a creature dies, you put a charge counter on it, and then at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you add a black for each counter on it, which is a lot. And we went over the Great Edge. 2 recursion, here's the 1 recursion that we haven't gone over. Midnight Clock is 2 in a white, 2 in a green, blue. It's blue. 2 in a blue for an artifact. Tap, add a blue. 2 in a blue, put an hour counter on the Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on the Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards and exile Midnight Clock. It's good ramp, and it's a fun way to just kind of like go boom, reset. I don't care about lands. We're not running the proliferate lands. We don't care about lands. Here's the combo. The way this works is simple if you happen to not know. As long as Walking Ballista has 2 1/1 counters on it, you can pay 1 and a white with Heliod to give it lifelink, and then it can ping someone for 1, gaining life, triggering Heliod to put a 1/1 counter on Walking Ballista, and then remove that 1/1 counter. It needs to have 2 counters, so it is 4 for Walking Ballista, 3 for Heliod, and then 2 for its effect, making it 9 mana to win. If you didn't play them before. Counters, these are just cards that like counters that aren't 1/1 counters. Aganoth Pillars of the King's Earth Ozolith is a 1-drop legendary artifact. This card's a little complicated and expensive, so please, proxy it. When a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on it. Put those counters on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from Ozolith onto target creature. So that takes all of them and puts them onto a creature. And it only cares about creatures, not non-creatures. Still a really good card. If like your creature with 5 counters on it dies, you can just move them onto something else, making killing creatures less detrimental to you. Luminarch Ascension is another one of those really good cards with crest counters. At the beginning of your each opponent's end step, if they didn't lose life this turn, if you didn't lose life this turn, you put a quest on it. And as long as it has, and for 1 and a white, you make a 4/4 white angel creature token flying, and you activate this only if you have 4 more quest counters. So you can get this pretty fast. And it's just so strong to make 4/4 angels this way. Ominous Seas, whenever you draw a card, you put a foreshadow counter on it. And when you can remove 8 foreshadow counters to make an 8/8 blue Kraken. You can also cycle it for 2. We went over those guys. Lizal, Valakith, Champions, and Doubling Season. These double 1/1 counters, or just double counters. Technically, Lizal, if you would put a 1 or more counters on a creature planeswalker, you put that many +1. Doubling Season doubles the counters on anything. If in effect would put a counter on 1 or more token, would create 1 or more tokens, you double them. And if in effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, you put twice. And then the One Ring. Why is the One Ring here? It's expensive. Again, proxy it. But also, because it's a counter card and it just fits, okay? It enters the battlefield. So 4 generic for a legendary artifact with indestructible, and when the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from anything until end of turn, from everything until end of turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. Tap it, put a burden counter on the One Ring, then draw a card for each burden counter on it, the One Ring. So you can tap it, put a burden counter on it, put another burden counter on it with proliferate from your commander, get to your turn, take 2 damage, untap it, tap it. Now you put a burden counter, you draw 3. And then you put 4, you're going to take extra damage this way, but you do draw a lot of cards. And Line Slash is just damage here. It's 1/1 counters. So exile target card from a graveyard. If it was, did I not put this? It's not in 1/1 counters. That's strange. 1/1 counters. There we go. But yeah, so you exile a target card from a graveyard. If it's a permanent, you put a 1/1 counter on, and then equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each 1/1 counter on. Lion Slash and reconfigure onto another creature for 2. Draw cards, we went over those guys. Beast Whisperer, whenever you cast a spell, a creature you draw a card. Bident, Coastal, and Reconnaissance all draws your card whenever a creature you control deals damage to an opponent. Which is great. 1 second here. So yeah, they all do stuff. Coastal has no other effects. Bident of Thought, so you can pay 1 and a blue to tap it to make all your creatures you put into attack this turn. And Reconnaissance Mission makes it so that it has cycling too. Guardian Project draws your card whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield. They can't have the same name as another card in their graveyard. It doesn't really matter for 90% of cards. Toski draws your card whenever a creature deals damage to their opponent. It also can't be countered, has indestructible, and must attack. Evasion, these are your evasions. This is evasion because it makes your 1/1 counter creatures unblockable. This gives them flying, and this one makes your opponent attack, so you can technically leave them wide open. Interaction, Walking Ballistic can pop, it can deal 1 damage to stuff. An Offer You Can't Refuse counters a non-creature spell, but makes them, but gives them 2 treasures. Nature's Claim pops an artifact or enchantment, but gives them life. Path and Swords pop exiles creatures. Arcane counters something, but you guys draw cards. Assassin Trophy pops anything, but gives them a land. Counter spell, counter something. Heroic Intervention gives all your stuff, all your permanents hexproof and indestructible. Lion Slash exile stuff from graveyard, same with Scavenging Ooze. And Teferi's Protection just makes it so that everything you control just phases out and you gain protection from everything. Actually, you and everything phase out, so they can't be touched. Kind of better than protection from everything, because board wipes don't work out. We went over the Mana Sinks, and then Protection, counter spells are protection, that's protection, these are all protection, we went over them. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots just gives Shroud and haste, and then Hexproof and haste. We went over the token generators, and we're not running many wipes, so this is the deck. It's very similar to the 1/1 counter deck, because like I said in the 1/1 counter deck, I think it was the first one. There's just so much going with it, so it's the easiest to build around. But you're just running those few other cards to just make this considered like the best. You're not just running 1/1 counters. So that's the deck. Hope you all liked it. Leave a like. As always, don't forget to leave a like, comments down below, subscribe. Have a great day.